now. Senator Tom Cotton, a member of the Armed Services and Intelligence Committee. Senator, good to have you here. There wasn't a lot of foreign policy discussion over the course of the campaign, but there was a bit. And here's something that Joe Biden said about how he looks at China and Russia. Watch this. I'm going to read it for you. In the near term, Russia, which seeks to undermine our democracy and our partners in Europe, including the members of the NATO alliance, in the medium term, a rising China poses the greatest strategic challenge to the United States and our allies in Asia and in Europe. Ultimately, over the long term, the greatest geopolitical threat, he said, an existential threat to all countries, is climate crisis. So what do you make of where he appears to stand there?
Well, Martha, thanks for having me on. First, I want to commend the State Department, especially Peter Berkowitz, the Director of Policy Planning, the State Department's internal think tank, for producing an outstanding report about the Chinese Communist Party and its ambitions to replace the United States as the world's dominant superpower. It's reminiscent of what George Kennan wrote in the so-called Long Telegram at the beginning of the Cold War, and it's something that Joe Biden needs to read. Joe Biden, according to former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates, who served in the Obama-Biden administration, has been wrong about nearly every major foreign policy and national security decision for the last 48 years. Should he become president, I wish that he would change that record, but it doesn't sound like he's going to. I mean, I remember when Barack Obama made fun of Mitt Romney for saying that Russia was our chief threat.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that Joe Biden is willing to give away the store to Beijing for some illusory, fantastical climate change agreement when China, the world's largest polluter, doesn't change their ways, while the United States has had declining carbon emissions, does agree to sacrifice our interests, to stop standing up for our workers who've had their jobs outsourced, or for religious minorities and democratic activists in China and Hong Kong and Taiwan who don't want to be under the thumb of communist oppression, or willing to kowtow to Beijing and international organizations to get more so-called prestige or credibility, when in reality it just is naive and gullibility.
Yeah. I mean, you make many good points, one of which is that we've been better at cutting our emissions than we had even been scheduled to be if we had stayed in the Paris Climate Accord. So we've exceeded those expectations even outside of that deal. I want to ask you about the Afghanistan-Iraq discussion and the drawdown to 2,500 troops by January, as we heard from the new defense secretary yesterday. And here's what Senator McConnell had to say about that yesterday. Let's watch.
I think it's extremely important here in the next couple of months not to have any earth-shaking changes with regard to defense and foreign policy. I think a precipitous drawdown in either Afghanistan or Iraq would be a mistake.
Do you agree? And do you think that that is the beginning of a separation between some of the Senate viewpoints and the White House?
Well, Martha, I agree with Senator McConnell's point that we don't want to leave Afghanistan or Iraq if the terrorists are going to be able to take over and use it as a safe haven again. That's exactly what happened in Iraq and in Syria in 2011 to 2014. President Obama drew down our troops to zero, and then the Islamic State rose to power, and we had to return to those countries to protect our citizens. At the same time, the president has said all along that he wants to continue the steady and gradual removal of our troops from Afghanistan and Iraq and other countries in the Middle East, in no small part so we're better postured around the world to confront the genuine long-term threat to our security, which is a rising and communist China. But Senator McConnell made those remarks before the announcement yesterday. He was speaking, I believe, about an exit entirely. The announcement that Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller said is that we're going to move a couple thousand troops home. Again, if that's what the commanders on the ground say that they need to maintain the support for the fragile peace agreement in Afghanistan and to prevent it from becoming a terrorist safe haven, then I would give a lot of credit to their judgment.
It sounds like there's some actual lining up between the Biden team and the Trump presidency on that particular point. With regard to the future Secretary of State, we don't know who it's going to be yet. Obviously, there's speculation out there, and there's some reporting that President Obama is encouraging President-elect Biden to choose Susan Rice. Here's what she said when she was asked about the potential for a cabinet spot.
I am very glad that we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris coming to the White House. They are going to bring compassionate, responsible, effective leadership. And if they think I can be helpful to them in any particular capacity, I'm very open to serving.
So tell me what you think about the potential for her being confirmed in the Senate if she is chosen senator.
Susan Rice was the typhoid Mary of the Obama administration foreign policy. She was at the middle of every terrible, flawed decision. Just take Libya, for example. Many people remember Benghazi, but the very fact that we launched that war to begin with, without any plan for stability afterwards, to turn that country into an open civil war zone where they are still engaged in the slave trade, which allowed millions of migrants to cross the Mediterranean Sea if they survived the crossing and flood into Europe. That's an example of the kind of terrible judgment that Susan Rice displayed in the Obama administration. It's why a Democratic Senate couldn't even confirm her in 2012 when Barack Obama wanted to make her a Secretary of State. If a Democratic Senate couldn't confirm her, I doubt that a Republican Senate is going to confirm Susan Rice.
Yeah. And at the time, she was made the National Security Advisor, non-confirmable, not necessary to be confirmed spot in the White House. Senator Cotton, thank you. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Martha.